Engineering has helped our species advance throughout time. However, questionable decisions and unbelievable stupidity might send us back to the Stone Age. From causing a whole massive lake to dry up, to buildings toppling over, here are unbelievable and expensive engineering mistakes.
Hey guys, this is American Eye, bringing you another great video.
Number 13. The Pain Inflicter. This machine is quite strange and causes a lot of debate on whether it should even exist in the first place. It might not seem too serious now, but humans should really consider never making these things again. It makes you wonder if a reality where killer robots can take over the world. This robot we see here administers a small prick with a needle of people who it just doesn't like. We might also add that it can draw blood. It decides on its own after scanning someone's fingertip, and the owner has no say on the robot's decision. This seems to break some type of rule on robots about them not hurting people. The creator claims that since injury is so minor, it isn't really a threat to humans and is okay to build. Whether the injury is minor or not, the whole point is that we shouldn't have robots choosing whether or not it wants to injure someone. Whatever you do, just don't get on this robot's bad side. Number 12. Boston Molasses Disaster. Getting flooded by water isn't bad enough. Imagine getting flooded by thick, gooey molasses. In January of 1919, Boston, Massachusetts was covered in this substance made for making alcoholic beverages. During this flood, it really didn't move as slow as molasses. It actually reached speeds of 35 miles an hour, wreaking havoc on the neighborhood. The Purity Distilling Company had overheated their stockpile, causing the tanks to burst. The tank was over 50 feet tall and contained over 2,300,000 gallons, or 8,700 cubic meters. That's a lot of molasses. According to eyewitness details, the streets were waist deep in molasses and it took months to nearly clean the whole harbor. People claim they can still smell the molasses today in this area. Number 11. Skylab. The Skylab was launched in May of 1973 and weighed over 75 metric tons. The satellite received heavy damage during the launch from Earth's atmosphere. The damage here is really measured more in dollars than human lives. The launch resulted in the loss of the micrometeoroid and sun shield from its main solar panels. NASA recovered some of the pieces, but in the end, the government wasted $3.6 billion tax dollars in this engineering fail. Number 10. R101. The R101 took off in October of 1930 and was the world's largest flying ship at 731 feet at that time. Later on, a vessel named the Hindenburg took that title, and we already know what happened there. The R101 crashed, making a trip across the English Channel and into France. Due to fast winds on its way to France, the R101 crashed into a hill near the city of Beauvais in the region of Picardy. This ignited the hydrogen that caused the vessel to quickly catch on fire. It was actually more devastating than the Hindenburg crash, which was extensively covered by the media. If the hydrogen valves would have been more properly secured, it's possible this crash would have been less deadly. Number 9. St. Francis Dam Disaster. The St. Francis Dam was built in order to supply the city of Los Angeles with a fresh water supply. Without building this dam and aquifers to deliver the water, LA would not have the resources to grow. It was born in the San Francisco Valley, just 40 miles north of LA, and is close to the current city of Santa Clarita. The architect William Mulholland was the chief engineer of this project that would leave many fatalities, and many blame him directly. The dam was built in 1926, and despite its leaking, the architects did nothing to fix it. Finally, the entire 185-foot dam collapsed and killed 450 people from the flood. 12 billion gallons of water flooded the communities below, making it one of America's worst engineering blunders. Number 8. The Aral Sea. The shrinking of the Aral Sea is known as one of the worst environmental disasters ever. Satellite images released by NASA are extremely shocking, and the entire lake was once the 4th largest in the world. The water level decreased so quickly that wreckage of fishing boats like we see here are in the dry lake bed. Unbelievable ideas from the Soviet engineers were to begin diverting the water in order to build cotton plantations. The Aral lost a huge amount of water due to evaporation that will never be replaced. This has negatively affected nearby countries like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. It's basically now a dry, salty, toxic wasteland with soil that contains chemicals from weapons testing, pesticides, and fertilizers. We doubt anyone will be able to grow anything here anymore. Number 7. Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope was launched into orbit after 8 years of construction in 1990 in order to provide clear images of the universe without Earth's atmosphere getting in the way. Here we can see how clear the images here are from this miraculous space telescope. This is responsible for some of the clearest images of outer space that we still have to this day. But this space telescope had a serious problem. It wasn't only a technical failure, but also a leadership failure as well. Old instruments were switched out and new pieces were replaced, hoping to make it even better. They also neglected necessary maintenance that was needed. In 2004, the machine became inoperable due to the telescope imaging spectrograph that was installed in 1997. This device combines the camera with a spectrograph and was broken from a power supply failure. Eventually, it was fully repaired, but not after spending years of floating around in space not sending images back to NASA. Number 6. Delta II explosion. With so many dangerous trips to space using rockets carrying so much highly flammable rocket fuel, there's bound to be extremely catastrophic explosions from time to time. Reaching outer space is certainly no easy task if you think about it. The Air Force Delta II rocket was launched from Cape Canaveral and was carrying an $81 million satellite, the UGPS-2. This rocket soars through the sky with over 200,000 pounds worth of thrusting power. It was approximately 1,000 to 2,000 feet in the sky when suddenly an explosion happens. The explosion creates a dangerous gas of hydrochloric fumes. NASA prefers launching pads in isolated areas away from human settlements and close to oceans in order to prevent any collateral damage. In this case, only cars in the parking lots and small NASA buildings were destroyed nearby. Number 5. Shanghai Lotus Riverside Complex. In 2009, the Lotus Riverside Apartment complex collapsed in a dramatic fashion and toppled over almost completely intact. This brings a lot of concern with the safety standards in China and how their rush to modernize so quickly might result in catastrophes like this one. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither should these apartment complex buildings. You can only imagine the horror if people were actually living inside. The building was almost complete, but construction workers were told to dig an underground garage. This ultimately caused the tower to topple over and the soil near the bank of the river to become unstable. The government imposes safety checks on construction sites like this, but obviously something went wrong. The collapse of many structures in China have often been linked to corruption. It's safe to say the inhabitants of the nearby buildings must be a little bit weary. Number 4. Chernobyl. Arguably the worst nuclear disaster of all time took place in the Soviet town of Pripyat, and the land here will never be the same. This was classified as a Class 7 nuclear disaster, and no one saw this coming until it was too late. This image here shows the explosion that happened at the Chernobyl power plant on April 26, 1986. Even after 30 years go by, this place is extremely radioactive. Dust of the explosion sent harmful particles all over Europe, with Chernobyl being the epicenter. This image here shows the eerily abandoned control panel of the reactor number 4, and it looks completely consumed by dust. It then cost over $250 billion to clean up, and much valuable land would become victim. Certainly a costly miscalculation on someone's part. Number 3. The Ford Pinto. The Pintos will forever go down in history as being one of the most costly and unsafe engineering blunders. It was mass-produced, and people were lining up to buy this cheap alternative to other cars at the time. The Pinto was designed with a vulnerable gas tank near the rear bumper. Something such as a fender bender had the ability to ignite the fuel that was being leaked out. Any type of spark that was made from impact resulted in huge flames. Further collision tests were done, which show how frighteningly flammable it truly was. The final recall for this was 1.5 million vehicles. Pinto's reputation was too damaged to ever make any kind of comeback. Number 2. Abay Dam. If you build something on your territory that could still negatively affect surrounding countries, should they still have the right to do it? This dam in Ethiopia has created tension with neighbors such as Egypt and Sudan over the rights of the water of the Nile River. This could turn out to be a huge mistake in the future, considering that the Nile has always been Egypt's main source of water. People from around the world have invested in this project, which cost over $4 billion US. Countries like China have heavily invested in Ethiopia's infrastructure recently, and another drought in this country could seriously set them back into famine. On the other hand, this hydroelectric dam could make Ethiopia fairly wealthy with agriculture, a surplus of water, and plenty of power. Egypt is expected to be completely out of water in 2025, so imagine someone won't be happy here. Any mistake on the dam could have huge consequences for everyone. Media companies like Al Jazeera have openly mocked this project. Sudan is trying to stay neutral. Sounds like these countries need to get together and have a damn talk. Number 1. Just a little too wide. 341 trains in France were produced in 2 years, and the company, SNCF, has paid a ridiculous amount of money for it. It cost them roughly $68 million to fix the mistake on top of the price they already paid. The main problem here was that someone wasn't using their ruler correctly. The trains turned out to be too wide to operate on the train tracks. This kind of error should not have happened, and we imagine someone had to lose their job because of this. They either had to fix the trains or the rails, and they chose the rails.